What is up, guys? Speed here, and today we're going to be looking at the top 10 core counters part 2. The reason why I say this is part 2 is recently I made a video talking about the top 10 core counters, but I specifically talked about supports that counter cores, and a lot of people are like, oh, Speed, you know, I don't really pick my support after the cores, and generally, you know, I agree with that. I agree it's hard to counterpick cores with supports. There are certain games, it's quite often, where you can either pick a 4 or even a mid laner or pick a support as a core to counter them. But nonetheless, we're here today to talk about 10 cores. I have mid laners, safe laners, and off laners that have core counters. So, you know, if let's say the enemy team picks QoP, which will be my first example, you can pick Legion as a counter. And yeah, I'll eventually talk about that in a moment here. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this series of learning about counter picks and drafting tips in Dota, I recommend you like and subscribe to help our channel grow and let me know that you want to be seeing more of these videos. I feel like that's become staple. But nah, in all seriousness, guys, if you could like and subscribe, I would appreciate it a lot. On top of that, if you're interested in becoming better at Dota as soon as possible and your goal is to get to the next MMR bracket ASAP, I recommend you sign up for the gameleap website. I'm going to be making a lot of in-depth courses, and I plan later today to make a core video. Not going to tell you exactly what video it is. You're going to have to sign up for gameleap.com with the discount link down in the description down below to figure out. But yeah, later today I'll be making a video that will be posted over there very, very soon. So yeah, if you guys basically enjoy my content and you have some extra money, I recommend you check out gameleap.com and considering signing up. I think it's extremely worth it, and I hope you guys give it a shot. Let me know in Discord if you do. So as I said, Queen of Pain is our first example, and yes, Legion Commander is the first counter to Queen of Pain. Now you might be like, Speed, well, I'm not going to be leaning against QoP as Legion, am I? Absolutely not. I love Legion against QoP mid. I think this is actually one of the better QoP matchups. You simply max your press the attack, which purges dagger pretty reliably. The cooldowns are very, very similar, at least until QoP maxes dagger, which is unlikely against Legion. If you pick Legion, QoP maxes dagger, you win. But in all seriousness, yeah, you purge dagger in the lane, you heal up, which is great against QoP, right? Having sustain against QoP in the laning stage is huge. You're pretty tanky, you have very high damage, and most importantly, you have dual plus blade mail. Just in general, blade mail against QoP is obviously good. She has a lot of damage that is hard for her to control, right? You can reflect her ulti and scream, and it's like half of her health. So you combine that with the duel, and all of a sudden, QoP can't split push, she really can't dagger people, and therefore, you can just kind of kill her with blade mail duel. It makes QoP's game extremely hard. So yeah, Legion is my top counter for QoP. Number 2 is RIKI. RIKI is, I guess, somewhat similar to Legion. You actually could lane RIKI mid against QoP if you want to, but I'm more suggesting RIKI carry. The reason for this is, you know, RIKI can dodge daggers with his E, he can dodge QoP ulti, QoP scream, and most importantly, he can smoke screen and defuse with QoP, which is extremely useful. I think any hero that prevents QoP from being mobile and escaping, right, disengaging and re-engaging at different times is going to be a QoP counter, right? Someone who could sustain or, you know, not care about her burst and can lock her down is kind of what you want against QoP. And that gets me into my last hero that counters QoP, which is BLOODSEEKER. Similar to Legion Commander, you can sustain through the harass of QoP. Sure, QoP actually can burst you. You have to be careful about blood raging yourself, as then QoP's nukes will almost one-shot you. But yeah, BLOODSEEKER at some point, you know, considering his good stat gain and good talents, becomes very, very tanky. He can buy a blade mail to counter the QoP if you would like to do so. And most importantly, you have this annoying silence that absolutely ruins QoP. If you see her blink in, which obviously she's gonna do at some point, you blood right her, you rupture her, and her game is very tough. QoP does not like getting run at, right? She specifically does not like getting run at when she cannot run away, right? QoP is more of an in and out hero, so yeah, I think BLOODSEEKER counters that out, and you could even lane against QoP mid. I would imagine it's not that bad of a matchup. Now let's get into Clinks. So who counters Clinks? Well, the first set of heroes that I want to mention, it's not one in particular, but basically any illusion hero. Naga, PL, Meepo, they're all good against Clinks for a couple of reasons. So illusion heroes generally have pretty high armor. You know, you can look to Naga, that's pretty simple, she has a lot of armor. Even Terrorblade, Terrorblade, funny enough, on Dota buff actually does not, quote unquote, counter Clinks. Clinks is a, you know, I think it's a 50.51% win rate against TB. So that's not really a counter, right? However, at the end of the day, high armor against Clinks with illusions ruins him, right? Because the Clinks can't actually zone him out, right? He can't zone them out, he can't gank them in the early game. His Deso timing or medallion timing is not that big of a deal. And yeah, Clinks is all physical damage. So if you don't care about physical damage, or most importantly, you can disengage from that physical damage, such as the likes of a Naga and PL, right? You can mirror image to basically Manta dodge some sorts, Clinks' damage, PL can doppelganger, and then you get on top of him with illusions, right, with your diffusal blade, you kind of just destroy him. Clinks has a very hard time against these heroes, and finally Meepo is really good in that regard as well. Now let's get into the other invis heroes that counter him. I think Bounty Hunter and RIKI are very good against Clinks. I really like RIKI in particular, similar I guess in some regards to the QoP reasons. But yeah, Clinks can't burst you, right? Clinks can't really go on you. I guess he could rush Orchid, but, well, yeah, I guess if you're gonna play that matchup, Clinks' timing is Orchid if he wants to counter out the RIKI. But in a lot of situations, Clinks nowadays, from my observations, are rushing Deso, and therefore, you know, RIKI can make Clinks miss a ton, he can get on top of the Clinks, avoid Clinks' damage, and Bounty Hunter is somewhat similar, a little bit different. Obviously, Track prevents Clinks from disengaging at any time. You do a lot of magical damage, right? The Janata plus the Shuriken Toss is going to be half of Clinks' health if he does not have a death pack going, which lets you gank Clinks very easily. And most importantly, in my opinion, Bounty Hunter is very good because he can buy armor items. He can buy a Vlad's, he can buy a Crimson for the team, he could even buy a Heaven's Halberd if needed to counter out the Clinks, which is very useful. And finally, you have LYCAN. Honestly, I compared LYCAN with Naga, PL, and Meepo. It's kind of like an illusion hero, but it's units. Unit heroes in general, such as Beastmaster and LYCAN, are good against Clinks because not only do they reveal him with a maxed out Necro 3, Clinks has no way of getting away from LYCAN. You can't. Clinks really can't burst him. I mean, maybe with a stun, it's not too bad, but for the most part, LYCAN's gonna see you coming, and on top of that, he's gonna cripple you with his wolves, and then you have no attack speed, and then the Necros are eating you, you run out of mana, and you can't get away. Yeah, it's a good matchup. Kinda just runs over Clinks. Next, let's talk about Legion Commander. As I said, I think Legion is a good counter to QoP, but who actually counters Legion? In particular, I think Wraith King in low MMR games is a counter to basically everyone. Wraith King is, I believe, still the highest win rate hero in pubs right now. Like, I was doing research for this video on who counters who, and Wraith King seemingly popped up for every single hero, but I do think it is particularly good against Legion Commander, as you can sustain the laning stage. If the enemy knows what they're doing, Legion can bully Wraith King, so be careful about that. If you have like a Legion Grimstroke or a Legion Lina lane, you know, it could be a bit hard for Wraith King to lane, but at the end of the day, usually in most solo queue matches, Wraith King will not receive as much pressure as he should. He will get a decent radiance timing and then a halberd, which is obviously good against Legion and makes Legion miss a ton or not attack at all. And yeah, you can man up to the Legion at that point. So is Wraith King good against Legion? I would say so in the majority of your Dota 2 matches. Three heroes that are known counters to Legion are the man up carries. You know, the man up carries include URSA, Troll Warlord, and Monkey. These are the three carries that are kind of just known for manning up to people. They just have mechanisms that let them do that, and therefore they can all be good against Legion Commander. On top of that, they all have some sort of spell that lets them deal with duel. If they see the duel coming, Ursa can enrage, Troll can ulti, right, his battle trance, and Monkey King can either stun or ulti as well, giving him extra armor. So basically, if Legion tries to fight any of these heroes, even though she's usually good at manning up, she can lose to all of these examples. And finally is Night Stalker, and the reason why I like Night Stalker is for a couple of reasons. Night Stalker is going to prevent Legion from seeing the targets that she wants to jump in a fight. You cannot purge, right? You cannot press the attack off the Night Stalker silence. So let's say Night Stalker goes on your puck and you're playing Legion, you know, you want to purge to try to save him. You can purge the Void Slow, that's okay to be fair, and you know, I guess the heal is alright. But at the end of the day, the silence is what's countering the puck in that case, and Night Stalker completely ignores it, right? You cannot purge the silence, and therefore Night Stalker's AoE silence, in my opinion, is very good against Legion. It also counters out Legion's ability to duel people. If he sees it coming, or, you know, scouts at the Legion, he can go on her. And does Legion really want to duel a Night Stalker? Not really. The Blade Mill is going to do basically nothing. Night Stalker can very often buy items like Crimson Guard and other tanky items, and therefore it's just kind of a good matchup for Night Stalker. Next up, let's talk about Windranger. I'm going to specifically be saying Windranger mid lane, but doesn't really matter. Any of these heroes are good against Windranger, whether or not she's a support, an offlaner, or a mid laner. Number one is Bloodseeker, and this is kind of similar to QoP. Windranger doesn't like being locked down. The main kit of the hero is the fact that she can run around and, you know, dodge in between fights. So if you can lock her down with Rupture, it's useful. I don't feel like I have to say much more, but I will. Bloodrite is obviously good against Windranger because silences and magical damage are good, and most importantly, as I said, Bloodseeker can buy either a Rod of Atos, which we've seen from Midwin's Bloodseeker recently, or the Blade Mail, and Blade Mail is a natural counter to Windranger's Focus Fire. Next up we have Centaur, and Centaur I guess is somewhat similar to Bloodseeker in a lot of regards. Retaliate is the most notable thing here, as if Windranger ultis a Centaur, she gets a retaliation proc for every single auto attack. right? And that's a lot of damage. WINDRANGER doesn't want to deal with that. Once again, Centaur can also buy a blade mail if he so desires, but most importantly, he buys a Crimson Guard. So even if WINDRANGER goes on one of the teammates of Centaur, he can hopefully stampede them away at some point, stomp the WINDRANGER to stop her from hitting, or most importantly, as I said, pop Crimson Guard to keep them alive, even pipe for a long period of time. Remember, a lot of WINDRANGER's right-click damage is procs from MKB and Maelstrom, so having a pipe is useful as well. And finally on the list is Dragonite. Now this one, I know, it can go both ways. This one I personally felt like is generally good if you understand why you're good against WINDRANGER. If you're playing Dragonite against WINDRANGER, please do not go solo on the map and try to split push. However, if you group up your team around a Dragonite and WINDRANGER tries to go on anyone, you can stun her. On top of that, you are a natural Halberd buyer. Most Dragonites in this tournament are buying Halberd. Halberd counters WINDRANGER. There's not too much to say. It provides evasion, which is great if she goes on you, and of course the disarm is god tier against ranged heroes as it lasts for a particularly large amount of time. And I guess one more thing I would like to mention is previous to WINDRANGER getting her proc items, your Focus Fire will do very little damage to anyone that Dragonite is around, because if he uses the Breathe Fire on you in combination with his talent, you do very little damage. So yeah, you really do need that MKB or Maelstrom against Dragonite, which isn't that hard to get to, but you know, you do need it, otherwise Dragonite hard counters you. Next up, let's get into Phantom Assassin. Number 1 is Necro that counters PA, because Necro, obviously, I don't really know how you couldn't see that. You're good against PA in lane because you deal magical damage. PA gives you stick charges, which buffs up your Shroud in the laning stage. And obviously, if PA jumps anyone in the early game, right, whether or not some of your teammates, you build Lotus, you can build Greaves, you can buy Veil, which counters PA because it amps her biggest weakness, magical damage, and of course, you can ulti her. Even if it's later into the game, you can no-joke Reaper Scythe PA just to kite out her BKB timing. Next up is WINDRANGER, and I'm sure you could argue that WINDRANGER will miss a lot against PA, but if you are playing Wind and you're against PA, I recommend you go for a MKB into a BKB into an Ags, and then PA will struggle against you, as you can solo kill her if she's split pushing with no problem at all, and PA will miss all of her attacks. Phantom Assassin does not want to have to buy an MKB or a Divine Rapier early into the game. Usually she wants to go for a Basher or a Deso, which is not too much of an issue for WINDRANGER. And finally we have Morphling. Morphling doesn't necessarily hard counter PA in the lower brackets, as no one can really play Morphling. I would argue Morphling is the hardest hero in Dota. Yes, I would actually be willing to argue that. And for that reason, I think if more people actually knew how to play Morphling, PA's win rate against Morphling would be abysmal, because Morphling just destroys PA in my opinion, for a multitude of reasons. Number 1, if you don't have to deal with a Vessel or a Silence, you can rush E-Blade, and you one-shot Phantom Assassin. It's that simple, I'm not kidding. On top of that, even if you don't go E-Blade and you have a Manta, right, because you need it, Manta makes it very hard for PA to get on top of you. Wave Farm makes it hard for PA to get on top of you. Strength Morph makes you unkillable to her, basically. And of course, you could push her away with your Adaptive Strike as well. So overall, Morphling can't really be killed by PA, and Morphling does a ton of magical damage for your average quote-unquote carry. Adaptive Strike, Wave Form, and any stolen spell is going to destroy PA in the early game. Next up, we have Wraith King. And yes, I'm sure a lot of you guys are happy to hear this, because Wraith King has been dominating pubs for quite a while now. This hero's been doing very well. So number 1 is Underlord, another top tier win rate hero within Dota buff, you know, just overall Dota matches. And the reason why Underlord is good against Wraith King is for a couple of reasons. Number 1, your laning stage is very good against Wraith King. I recommend you take a point in your E very early at level 1, I would even argue, and then at level 3 as well, and if you know what you're doing, you should deny the majority of Wraith King's creeps. Just think about it, Wraith King can't get last hits if you have like 80 or 90 damage and you actually focus on the creeps. On top of that, if at any point Wraith King summons skeletons, your Q, Firestorm, is pretty good with dealing with them. And finally, the main reason why I think Underlord is good against Wraith King is an underlooked one, but Underlord likes to buy Pipe and Crimson. Most Wraith Kings I currently see are buying Radiance, and if you have a Pipe, you're pretty good against Wraith Kings. So yeah, for all those reasons combined, Underlord is good. I personally really like Alch. You know, the stats aren't too good, but I think if you really know what you're doing on Alch and you hit your timings, you can just run over Wraith King. You're gonna have a Radiance plus 1 item at the same time Wraith King gets his Radiance, if that. You know, if Wraith King isn't have a good game, you literally can have 2 or 3 items before he gets 1, and therefore you run him over and you don't run out of damage, right? Alch will not run out of damage against Wraith King in the early game. So if you can prevent the game from going late and end in around 30 minutes, I believe Alch can do very well against Wraith King. Next up is ANTI-MAGE, because if I didn't say ANTI-MAGE against Wraith King, I know there'd be at least 18 comments saying, what about ANTI-MAGE? Like, I know, okay, it burns mana, and any hero that burns mana against Wraith King can quote-unquote be pretty good if you hit that timing. No, I even would argue LYCAN is very good against Wraith King. He can take over the jungle, he can burn his mana, he can end the game before Wraith King can come online, and therefore, you know, that's a pretty good matchup. But let's go back to ANTI-MAGE. ANTI-MAGE burns mana. Is there anything else you guys want me to say before I move on? Like, most games go late in low MMR brackets, so like, AM's good late game, which just makes him good against Wraith King. I mean, next up is INVOKER. So, INVOKER mid lane is kind of weak right now. So if someone goes Exort, you can pick anything and you'll win. But let's say they pick Wex. Well, there's a couple heroes mid that you could pick, and I'll go over actually all of them. Well, unit heroes. You can pick any unit hero against INVOKER mid. Yes, even the offlane ones. You can pick Brood, just pick Brood. If they pick INVOKER, you kind of just win. Like, don't tell me. I actually had some guy a long time ago tell me that INVOKER does fine against Brood, and I honestly just have no clue where he came up with that. I don't get it. How do you think that? How do you think that? I don't get it, but whatever. You can also pick LYCAN mid, you could actually pick Beastmaster mid, you could pick Visage, you can pick Lone Druid. Any of these heroes get on top of INVOKER. INVOKER can't deal with the units, he doesn't buy armor, he has bad armor, he dies to them, he dies, he just dies. Next up is RIKI. INVOKER is so bad against RIKI. Even RIKI mid, yes, pick RIKI mid against INVOKER. INVOKER cannot pressure you, he cannot EMP you, barely can tornado you. Cold Snap is not even that good, right? It could be okay, I guess, in some scenarios to prevent RIKI from blink striking and casting Tricks of the Trade, but for the most part, you can't EMP him, you can't cast a Meteor, you basically can't cast anything on RIKI, and then all of a sudden, RIKI gets one small item while you're trying to farm your 10k net worth that you need to be a relevant hero. I know, not on Wex INVOKER, okay, I know, all you need is a Vessel, which could actually be okay against RIKI, but nonetheless, INVOKER does not have a good HP pool, as I said, doesn't have the best armor. You know, it helps if you have Phase Boots earned, you're not terrible in that case, but RIKI can get on top of you, and it causes an issue, right? You can't really get him off you, he smoke screens you, he diffuses you, and your game's kind of hard. And finally is Clinks. Now Clinks, I would argue could go with either way, you know, to some extent, Deafening Blast, and I would say Cold Snap Burn, as well as Tornado, can all be very good against Clinks, even burning his mana with EMP, very useful, that's fine. But at the same time, if you're playing Clinks against INVOKER, I recommend you buy a lot of stats and mangoes, and you just try to hit the INVOKER a lot, just hit him a lot, go mid, hit him a lot, just hit him, just keep hitting him. I'm not kidding, don't stop hitting him. You can have 0 CS at 5 minutes, I'd be like, maybe it's not that bad. You probably have like 8 kills. But in all seriousness, as I said, INVOKER has armor issues for the most part, and therefore if you pick Clinks and you get on top of INVOKER, you sort of just kind of blow him up, right? That is the case with INVOKER. Even these Invis heroes, they sneak up on INVOKER, he casts a bunch of spells, he's not paying attention, boom, insta-death. Next up is RIKI, and oh my god, this video is going on for a long time, so if you guys are still here, please like and subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. They take a long time for me to not only record, but also to do research for, so I appreciate it if you could support me. But yeah, let's get into core RIKI. Number 1, Underlord counters him. Why? Because Underlord in the laning stage denies his creeps, doesn't get pressured too hard, and most importantly, I believe that Pit of Malice plus Rod of Athos is one of the hardest RIKI counters in the game. If RIKI casts Tricks of the Trade as a disengaged spell, you put a Pit of Malice on top of him, he comes out of it, he gets rooted, you follow it up with an Athos, he gets rooted again, and then he gets rooted again by the Pit of Malice, and he's stuck, which is really good against RIKI, and you buy defensive items that prevents RIKI from killing people. Next up is Techies, and I know you're gonna hate me for saying this, but yes, you could actually pick Techies as a RIKI counter. Techies core, you might ask, speed? Yeah, I guess. But I actually really like status mines against RIKI, don't hate me. And finally is Zeus and Bounty. You know, I think the Zeus RIKI matchup could go either way, I really do. You know, if RIKI gets on top of Zeus, Zeus has issues. However, if you are playing Zeus against RIKI, please buy a Ghost Scepter and a Force Staff or Yules. Don't go like Agzog Tharine. Please just stay alive and use your spells on him, and RIKI has a hard time. And of course there's Bounty Hunter. Same thing, you know, I mean, Bounty is pretty bad for RIKI because not only can RIKI not really kill you, right? You're so fast, you have a pretty good armor, you buy armor items, you buy drums, you cause a lot of issues for RIKI. You also, you know, the Shuriken and Janata are really good, and of course Track. Sure, Track makes sense against RIKI. Next up is Pangolier offlane, and yeah, and the first hero that counters him is Clinks. Clinks really does. Now, you could argue, okay, but isn't Rolling Thunder pretty good against Clinks? Like, you chain stun him and Clinks' HP pool can occasionally be really bad, and wouldn't the Disarm be really good against Clinks? While I would agree, at the same time, if Pango ever goes in and doesn't account for the Clinks, Pango will lose half of his health easily before he can even get his ultimate off. And most importantly, a lot of low armor Pangos are not buying Vlad, so they have like no armor, like no health. And then even if they Rolling Thunder, Clinks can throw down his ulti and auto attack you, and you will no joke die in your ultimate, no problems at all. Like Clinks just shreds you through your ultimate. And it's not like this is a one-off thing. Look at the win rates. Pangolier is like a 45% win rate against Clinks, and I think this is for good reason. Number 2 is Bloodseeker. I have to put this on here. Bloodseeker's just good against Pango. Crushes him in lane, you can go super aggressive. Bloodwright forces him to swashbuckle, which creates issues for Pango, right? It basically opens a gap where you can go on him in the laning stage. Obviously, if he gets silenced, it's bad for Pango. And Rupture is very straightforward. He rolls, you Rupture, he dies. And finally is RIKI. I feel like I'm saying RIKI a lot. I kind of do like RIKI as a core, especially low MMR games. I really do like RIKI. I think he's so hard to kill and is pretty good against a lot of the top meta heroes right now, or at least the popular pub heroes. And yeah, RIKI's good against Pango because with Smokescreen, you can dominate him in the laning stage. I would say Pango could do all right, depending on the supports. But if RIKI has like a Grimstroke or a Bane or something like that, Pango's going to get absolutely no farm. The game's going to be very hard, and then RIKI can feed off the fact that Pango has a low HP pool, Blink Strike, Smokescreen, and try to kill him in that duration, which is a big advantage against Pango, whose main strength is usually the fact that he's hard to kill, he's hard to track, but that's not a problem really for RIKI. And finally, let's get into Axe. Once again, like if you've enjoyed, and Axe offlane is countered by Veno and Necro to start. I put these heroes together because I want to say a couple of heroes, but Veno is really good against Axe because Plague Wards counters Blink. Blink Call with Blade Mail does absolutely nothing to Veno. His ulti prevents you from ever disengaging and re-engaging with Blink, right? That's usually a big thing that Axe does. He calls, he waits 10 seconds, 15 for Blink, and then calls again, but you can't do it against Veno. You're just constantly getting your Blink canceled, which is a big issue for Axe. Also, Veno leans very well against Axe as well. You know, you deny his healing on top of that. I just think Veno is very, very good against Axe for a plethora of reasons like that. On top of that, you can buy defensive items, even a Yules, to Yules the Axe. And same thing with Necro. Necro makes it relatively hard for Axe to blink. I wouldn't say that's the big thing. It's not like Heartstopper counters blink, it does not. But Ghost Shroud makes it impossible for Axe to do anything to you in call if you see him coming. The AoE heal makes it very hard for Axe to play the laning stage as you heal the creeps and do damage to him, right? You sustain through Axe's damage, which creates a lot of issues, and most importantly, you have no problem killing Axe. Heartstopper chops through Axe's high HP pool, and so does Reaper's Scythe. Next up, we have Clock offlane, countering Axe, and the reason for this is because Battery Assault is good against Axe. If you are against a Clock and you're playing Axe, please buy a Force Staff, but nonetheless, Clock offlane can solo kill Axe, you can make rotations, your E scouts out for the Axe, right? That's an important thing to note. You can scout the Axe and cancel his blink in medium to long range, which is a big counter to initiation heroes. It's the reason why Clock also counters Earthshaker. And finally, we have Lone Druid. Why? Because Lone Druid's really good against Axe in the lane. You can never counter Helix the Lone Druid. It's absolutely impossible, right? On top of that, Call is basically useless against Lone Druid. You can't call the main hero to do any damage. I mean, I guess you could if he's in a creep wave, but like, you can't Blade Mail Call because the main hero does no damage. The main hero ulties, meaning he has like a gajillion HP, so you can't really burst him. And then the bear eats you alive at all stages of the game. Axe can often have a hard time disengaging depending on his items. And so yeah, the bear kind of just kites you, and then you get roared, and you get kited more. And so it's really hard. But that's where we're gonna end the episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed and liked and subscribed. I really do appreciate it. As I said, these videos take quite a bit of effort, but thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and peace. Before you leave, just want to say a quick message. If you're trying to get better at Dota or you just enjoyed that video, I know this is pretty general, and you're gonna hear this quite a bit from me, but I recommend you sign up to gameleap.com. Why? Because I put a lot of effort into the content over there, and generally the effort I do there is different from the content you're gonna see here on YouTube. It is different. In fact, I usually go a lot more in depth on topics or into niche topics that help you get to the next level even faster. Because on YouTube, I often have to keep it more mainstream. And that's even why I'm putting it at the end of this YouTube video. That's why this is at the end, because a lot of people just watch 5 minutes, they skip through just for like the dopamine spike. But if you are interested in actually getting better at Dota, I recommend you go to the description down below, get your discount right now by clicking the link, sign up, use the discount code that you're gonna see there. And I hope to see you there right now. So click it. And yeah, thanks for watching.